Well, hello and welcome once again to Bible study time. Woo! And I'm telling you, we got a good one today. Yeah, I said a good one. But God, what are you doing? And we're studying from the book of Habakkuk. And our series is from gloom to glory, from pain to praise. And I want you to consider some steps to take as we move from gloom to glory. Because you do know we can't stay gloomy. We got to give God some glory. And we're going to move from pain to praise. And I certainly hope that it can help you in these difficult times. Now, why? And that is something that always seems to come up. Why? Why does God seem so far away? Why did I lose my job? Why did God take my loved one? Why doesn't God stop this war? Why do I worry so much when I know I should be worshiping? When will this anxiety be over? When God doesn't do what we want? We are tempted to get angry, lose faith, or take matters into our own hands, which is worse. We must, listen to me, brothers and sisters, we must posture our heart to follow God's lead. Walking humbly, remembering that God knows where He is going, He knows how to get there. He knows how long it's going to take. And He knows what He is doing. Now, the delay may be frustrating or even confusing to us because we don't know that God is at work behind the scene to accomplish His will. You may not see His hand, you hear me? You may not see His hand at work, but you can trust His promises are true. And another thing, you may not be ready for the answer just yet, but God is working to make sure you are ready when it comes. Now let's look. The prophet Habakkuk, he was a contemporary of Jeremiah. And he ministered in a culturally and political turbulent time. I mean, the brother could come on and talk to us right now because we are living in a culturally and politically turbulent time. And he was doing this right before Babylon took Judah into exile. Now, understand, I said Judah because Israel, they split. The north was known as Israel, the south was known as Judah. So it was Judah and Benjamin, two tribes made up Judah, and the rest made up Israel. Now, Israel's already gone into exile to the Assyrians. So this is right before Babylon took Judah into exile. Habakkuk's name means wrestling. And he had several questions for God. And sometimes wrestling with God is about going back repeatedly in prayer, being perseverance over something that is confusing to us, that He said, or what is happening around us, or what is going on in our lives. The fact of the matter is, how bad do you want it? Okay, sometimes the wrestling looks a bit like negotiating with God. At other times, it looks like we reminding God of His promises. God doesn't need us to remind Him. But there are some critical issues that concern Habakkuk. He received or he saw a vision from God. Thus, the book of Habakkuk records an actual vision of judgment that God gave to him. And I want you to notice that Habakkuk calls the vision a burden of hardship. Now, just let me say this. Teaching and preaching to people may seem easy to you, but it's a burden of hardship to the man or woman of God. That's why when you hear someone pray, restore back to him or her what they have used, you don't know how much energy it takes to get ready to do a lesson or do a sermon for people who probably not going to listen, won't remember what you just said, or attack what you're saying. So the problem said it was a burden of hardship. He was first burdened by the sins of his people. And then for a time, God's response to his question. And the response promised judgment on the whole nation. Let me just stop here and say this. If you ask God a question, he's not afraid to answer you. So God's first response to his question will burden the prophet greatly, so much so that he became discouraged and perhaps I can even say disillusioned. But here's what Habakkuk shows us what to do when we become discouraged, our burden. What did he do? He prayed. And that's what we need to do. We need to take our burdens to the Lord and leave them there. Don't get up and bring them back with you. You can't do nothing with them. But we need to remember this. If God doesn't do another thing, he's already done enough. Now let's read Habakkuk chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. And I'm reading from the Message Bible translation. Let me get a little water before I do that. The problem, as God gave Habakkuk to see it. Now, here's Habakkuk. God, how long do I have to cry out for help before you listen? How many times do I have to yell, help, murder, police, before you come to the rescue? Why do you force me to look at, I almost said 45's name. Why do you force me to look at evil, stare trouble in the face day after day, anarchy, violence break out, quarrels and fight all over the place, law and order falls to pieces, justice is a joke. The wicked have the righteous hamstrung and stand justice on its head. Woo! Now let me say this before I give you concern number 1. You could ask God a question, but you can't question God. Woo! Now, when you ask him a question, okay, he said, God, how long? But don't question his ability. Well, God, can't you do something about this? He can do something about you. Close your mouth. But Habakkuk opens with the words, how long? How long? A phrase that occurs 65 times in the Bible. And it often expresses anguish over God's perceived, you got to get that, perceived delay in bringing justice. his delay in answering our prayers. What's up, God? Why don't you answer me? Remember this. Justice delayed is not justice denied. Now listen, David exclaimed, how long on several occasions. Let me give you some. Psalms 13, 1 through 3. Oh Lord, how long will you forget me? Forever? Woo! How long will you look the other way? Now I need you to highlight this. He said, how long will you look the other way? Which implies that God wasn't even looking at him anymore. So how long will you look the other way? How long must I struggle with anguish in my soul, with sorrow in my heart every day? How long will my enemy have the upper hand? Now look what verse 3 says, turn. So God obviously had turned his head from him. Turn and answer me, O Lord my God. Restore the sparkle to my eyes, or I will die. David feels that God has turned his back and is paying him no attention. Look what Psalm 6, 1 and 3 says, oh Lord, don't rebuke me in your anger or discipline me in your rage. Have compassion on me, Lord, for I'm weak. Heal me, Lord, for my bones are in agony. I am sick at heart. How long, O Lord, until you restore me? Then look at Psalms 35, 17. How long, O Lord? See how it keeps coming up? How long will you look on and do nothing? Rescue me. See, he said, you looking on, but you ain't doing nothing. Rescue me from these fierce attacks. Protect my life from these lions. But I see, don't be misled. Now, Daniel was thrown in the lion's den, and he went to sleep on them. But lions will eat you up. Peter said, like a roaring lion walking up and down. The devil like a roaring lion walking up and down, seeking whom he may devour. Now, Psalm 79 and 5. Oh Lord, how long will you be angry with us? Forever? How long will your jealousy burn like fire? Then he goes to Psalms 94 and 3. How long, O Lord? How long will the wicked be allowed to gloat? And the wicked can gloat now. And then, check this out. This is from Revelation, so it's not David. These are the saints in glory around the throne, under the throne, near to Jesus. They say, how long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? You know they did us wrong. So let me ask you, have you ever had to pray a Lord, how long prayer? Did you get a response? And here's one thing I want you to notice. God does not, he answers Habakkuk, but he does not answer how long. Ooh-wee! He doesn't say, well, it's going to be just a little while longer. It'll be 2 months. It'll be in the next day. It's going to be 3 years. He does not say. It's not because God doesn't know. He knows. Because he had Jeremiah said to Jeremiah, Send them folks a letter over in Babylon. Tell them to marry, build houses, take care of themselves, do what they normally do, because they're going to be there for 70 years. So God knew how long. He just didn't see the need to tell Habakkuk. Habakkuk was disturbed because God seemed oblivious or unconcerned about the rampart evil in Judah. Well, let me ask you, do you have the same feeling about your neighborhood, about your community, about the world? He seemingly is pleading for help. But guess what? No help is coming. And so Habakkuk began to feel that God did not care about, or wasn't even concerned in the least with what was happening. What about today? Does he care? I mean, stop and think. People out on the street, they tried to overthrow the government. Now a former president has been indicted, found guilty on how many charges? 45? Well, that's his number. I don't know. And now his hand-picked court throwing out the evidence, throwing out the charges. So I say, Jesus, do you know? If you know and you're not doing anything, do you care? I got some how long questions. How long will the poor zip code have to pay the highest gas prices? How long are we to tolerate the ones who are to protect us, and they are the very ones killing us, and then go free without any consequences? Justice is a joke. How long will the most powerful and wealthiest country in the world not give decent health care coverage to its citizens? How long will we see boarded up houses in our neighborhoods? How long will we see our children killed by stray bullets and no one seems to care? Nobody seems to care about children getting out of school at 6 o'clock in the evening. How long? People that we elected look after us, look after their own desires first. How long will people be living on the streets, eating out of garbage cans? How long will we have to deal with police brutality? Now, we've said before that you can ask God a question, and we see the questions being asked. And we can see how frustrated the prophet had become because of his choice of the word cry out. See, he said, cry out. Look. Go back to, how long do I have to cry out for help? And cry out for help is different from just cry. It's an urgent cry due to anguish or danger. I mean, you know, like a mother knows her baby's cry. Well, when the baby cries, the mama knows the crying because she is hungry, because he needs a diaper change, or because he's sick. The mother knows her baby's cry. And I'm here to tell you that God knows our cry. Habakkuk was in anguish over the condition of the nation. And the nation was in danger because Get it now? Because of its rebellion against God. So Habakkuk prayed, fervently shrieking, crying out in distress, wondering, why is it taking God so long? And just like the mother knows her baby's cry, God knows our cry. So let's look at the conditions. We looked at the concern. Let's look at the conditions. In the community, there was injustice. There was wrongdoing. There was destruction. There was violence, strife, conflict. I'm still talking about Habakkuk's time. I thought maybe I started writing about my time. Yeah, that's what was going on in the community. In the courts were overwhelmed with the sheer number of lawsuits. The law is paralyzed. Judges were rendering unjust decisions. And the wicked are trapped in the righteous. The wicked trap the righteous by forcing them into court. I'm telling you, justice is a joke. But didn't I tell you? Don't ask God a question if you don't want to know the answer. You may not like the answer, but God will answer you. And so through verses 5 through 11, we're going to see what God has to say. He said, look around at the godless nations. Look long and look hard. Brace yourself for a shock. Something's about to take place, and you're going to find it hard to believe. I'm about to raise up Babylonians to punish you. Babylonians, fierce and ferocious. Woo! World-conquering Babylon, grabbing up nations right and left. A dreadful and terrible people, making up its own rules as it goes. Their horses run like the wind, attack like bloodthirsty wolves. A stampede of galloping horses, thundering out of nowhere. They descend like vultures, circling in on carrions. They're out to kill. Death is on their mind. They collect victims like squirrels, gathering nuts. Have you ever seen a squirrel gather nuts? Squirrel is busy. They mock kings, poke fun at generals, spit on forts, and leave them in the dust. They'll all be blown away by the wind. Brazen in sin, they call strength their God. Now, so let's look at correction. And God will intervene. He says he's going to intervene. But let me tell you what he also said. He will intervene in his own time, his own way. See, God was raising up the Babylonians for his purpose. Babylon is God's instrument to punish Judah. Babylon would be God's instrument of punishment and correction. His people had become so corrupt, so sinful, and rebellious that they were beyond the point of repentance. So God described the Babylonians as his agents of judgment. And he did it in terrifying terms. He did not disguise or downplay his message at all. Well, I was asked when I taught this lesson Monday. Somebody said, well, do you think that Donald Trump is God punishing us? And I laughed. And I said, uh-huh. I said, because God said, I gave you Barack Obama. But you all act like he was the second coming of Christ. He could walk on water as far as you were concerned. So I sent you someone else. Because understand this, God is the one who builds and makes governments. And so we see God describe the Babylonians as his agents of judgment. And he does it in terrifying terms. First, the Babylonians would be ruthless and conquer the world. The Babylonians, or Babylon, was the first worldwide super nation. And if somehow you thought that Rome was or the United States is, go back, check your history. Babylon, and God did it because God describes the first. He did not disguise or downplay his message at all. He said they will be ruthless and conquer the world. Second, because of their ruthlessness and brutality, they will be known and feared as a dreaded people. And whenever you heard that Babylon was coming, people just shook in their boots. Third, the Babylonians were a law unto themselves. They feared and listened to no one. They did exactly as they pleased. Now, I'm not out here trying to make no political statement or nothing. I'm just God's teacher. But I declare, Babylon sounds so much like Trump. I said it there, I said it. So, fourth, they would attack with a fierce and swift and devouring army. They would swoop in. And fifth, they would attack with any army bent on violence, sweeping in like the desert wind and taking prisoners as if they were swooping sand. The Babylonians, they would scoff at kings and their fortress cities. And because of their might, they grew proud and haughty. Because of their military success, as well as their strength and ingenuity, they grew proud. In fact, Scripture describes the Babylonians as one of the haughtiest, most arrogant people on earth. And let me tell you, you see, well, that's in next week's lesson, so maybe I'll just wait and tell you then. God's verdict. he would use the Babylonians to punish Judah. But catch this now, catch this. But the Babylonians would also stand guilty before God. Well, you could say, well, but he allowed them to do it. Why is they standing before God? Because they trust in their own strength instead of him. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, that shall he reap. See, and that only makes sense. I tell you, you can plant cabbage, but ain't no sense of going out looking for greens. You can plant potatoes, and corn is not going to come up in its place. What you sow is what you reap. And the Babylonians are going to reap at what they sow. They've been sowing violence. They've been showing arrogance. They didn't care about nobody. In fact, you take Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They left. They were one of the first wave that was marched out of Judah. They had to be somewhere between 10 and 12 years old. And yet they were faithful to God. So when they got there, they knew whatever the sow is what you reap. So guess what? They said, no, we're not buying into the Babylonian way. See, but Babylon, let me just give you just a little bit of history. What they would do, they would take the prisoners back to Babylon. Then they would send some to this province, some over to that. They would separate you so you wouldn't have an identity with anybody. And that's the way they separate them. So I have had people ask me, where was Daniel when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were told to bow down at the fiery furnace or at the statue, and they didn't, and they got thrown into fiery furnace? Where was Daniel? Well, Daniel could have been sent to another province. That's the way the Babylonians work. So all I'm saying, Judah, they harvest violence, hatred. They begin to become corrupt. And what did they get? They got someone who was worse than them. Conquer them and take them back into exile. You cannot sow violence. You cannot sow anger and think you will have peace. It just won't happen. But you sow violence and anger, it will grow and it will get you. Well, that's our lesson for this week. From gloom to glory, from pain to praise. Now, I need you for next week to finish reading the first chapter of Habakkuk. I need you to finish reading the first chapter, and I don't think I went to chapter 2. And that's your assignment for next week. And the title of the lesson is, God, are you serious? This is not fair. That is going to be Habakkuk's thought. Now, this is not fair. I said Judah was unrighteous, but you're getting somebody more unrighteous to us to beat us in place? There's something wrong with that. Something wrong with that. So we're going to have a good time studying this lesson. So I invite you to come, be a part of St. Stephen. We would love to have you. We would love to have you, and we will use you. Oh, yes, we will. We will use you, and if you're not in Sunday school, here's what you need to do. Call 502-583-6798. You can ask to speak to me or say, give me extension 6657. That's my extension. And ask me what class I recommend that you go to. I'll tell you. Yes, I will. I may even ask you a little something about yourself. Have you taught before, and put you to teach. But join us. Become a member of the St. Stephen Church. I'm telling you, if you want to join us, go to New Start at ssclive.org. Or, again, call us at 502-583-6798 and just leave the message with the operator. I want somebody, I want the decision counselors to call me because I'm interested in joining the church. I want to go from gloom to glory, from pain to pain. And that was our lesson. God, what are you doing? But here, let me tell you, he's working it out for you and for me. I'll see you next